Welcome back guys to Voicey here and another r/entitled parents. Imagine being generous enough to shout your friend while hanging out at a cafe, only to have them think that this is the norm, and they'll order 3 times what you ordered because they know you are going to pay for it. If you were in this situation, what would you do? Don't forget Voicey veterans to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story was called, My Child Can Do Whatever They Want to Make Them Happy. Random teenager, hold my orange juice. This story happened to a friend of mine a couple of years back, so the conversation won't be a 100% word-for-word accurate story. One day, my friend went to the supermarket, as people often want to do, and there were quite a few people waiting in line, as it was a Saturday. Waiting in line were, among others, an old lady, a teenager, and our entitled mother, with my friend being the first person in line after the person being helped at the moment by the cashier. So the order of the waiting line is other person, friend, old lady, entitled mum and kid, teenager. The old lady had to walk with a cane and was patiently waiting behind my friend. All of a sudden, she feels something banging against her cane. She looks down and sees the entitled kid kicking the cane for some reason. The mum is busy loading her groceries on the conveyor belt, so she's not paying attention to the kid. Friendly tone. Could you please stop kicking my cane, dear? I needed to walk and keep my balance. The entitled kid stops kicking and quickly hides behind their mum. The old lady smiles at them, turns back around and smiles at my friend, who had turned around to see what was going on. 10 seconds later, the old lady once again feels something banging against her cane. She turns around and again, the entitled kid was kicking it. The old lady, still in a friendly tone. Dear, I'm asking you again. Could you please stop kicking my cane? I need it for my balance. If you keep kicking it, you might kick it away and I could fall. The entitled kid stops kicking for a second, grins gleefully, and starts kicking the cane again, quite hard. Old lady turns to EM and asks, still friendly, could you please tell your kid to stop kicking my cane? I've told them 2 times already how dangerous it could be for me, but they don't want to listen. EM starts huffing and puffing. My kid isn't doing anything dangerous, and he's just kicking it a bit because he's bored. You haven't fallen over yet, have you? So it's sturdy enough to take a few kicks. Old lady at this point is starting to get annoyed. Who wouldn't be? And she asks the mother again to tell her kid to stop kicking the cane. No, I won't tell them to stop. I give my child a liberal upbringing, so they can do whatever they want if it makes them happy. Behind EM, my friend notices the teenager, who has been watching the scene unfold for quite some time, getting quite angry. He had a big bottle of orange juice in his hands, and as the EM starts yelling that her child can do whatever it wants, as that is what it means to practice liberal upbringing, and old lady just wants to ruin their fun. He quickly unscrews the cap on the bottle and proceeds to dump the contents all over EM's head. EM immediately shuts up in shock and turns to look behind her at teenager, who just grins and says, my mum gave me a liberal upbringing too, so if I want to dump orange juice all over some stuck-up woman because her kid is harassing a poor old lady, I can do that because it makes me happy. My friend immediately started laughing, prompting all of the other people in line to start laughing as well. Except for EM, of course. I don't know if EM ever pressed charges or something like that. Is it a good idea to dump orange juice over someone's head like that? Probably not, but I can't deny having felt like doing something similar a couple of times. And man, how I wish I'd have been there to see this play out. This kid reminds me of those kids back in school. The ones that would do something stupid like kick you or push you over or whatever. And be like, well, it's a free country. That was the stupidest line that a kid would ever use if they'd caused harm to someone's person or property. As if it was some sort of excuse. The word liberal comes from liberty, meaning freedom. But if you are infringing on someone else's rights, then that's not really freedom. Which means you're not a real liberal. A true liberal upbringing would mean he can do whatever he likes as long as he doesn't hurt anybody else, including kicking an old lady's cane. This story was called Entitled Golfer Blocks My Way to Go Home While Screaming at Me to Go Home. This happened a while back when I had foot surgery. I live on a golf course and there is a path that golfers use to get to different holes, like every golf course. Part of the path is 20 feet from my house. My friend was coming back from the gym, which is approximately 500 feet from my house. She was coming over for a visit. There are 2 paths and one goes the opposite direction, so she chose the wrong one. She called me saying she was lost and I decided to come outside to see where she was and meet her halfway on the path of my house, since I was on crutches at the time. so she finally sees me and comes to me. We both made sure we were out of the way of any golf carts that needed to get by. Demon Spawn starts angrily walking up to us, and here is how the conversation goes. In the cast is the entitled golfer, me, and my friend.
What the heck do you think you're doing walking on my golf course?
I look at her like she must be confused. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm not sure if you understand that this is the neighborhood golf course, and I'm allowed to walk here just as much as you are. EG clearly sees that I have a boot and that I'm on crutches, and looks at my friend.
What were you doing wandering over there, being in the way of the other golfers?
I was lost. I've never taken this way to her house before, and I wasn't in the way. The other golfers could easily drive past me. They didn't seem to mind that I was there. EG looks at me and says,
well, you two need to go back to where you belong and get off the path because you can't be here on my course.
I roll my eyes and start hobbling on back to my house, which was clearly not the way she wanted me to go.
Hey, I told you to get off the darn golf course.
Lady, my house is literally right there. I pointed to it. It was not even 50 feet from where we were standing.
No, you can't go that way. You have to walk all the way around the neighborhood.
That would probably take 2 hours, especially that I'm already in pain and sweating from the heat. It was also quite a distance because my neighborhood is big.
Then just drive home, you little craps. It will only take a minute or two.
I look at her like she is insane. You can clearly see that I can't drive because I just had freaking foot surgery. And my car is at the shop, so I don't have it with me. I walked here.
Then call your gosh darn parents.
So me, being a smart aleck, pretend to call my dad, who is currently on base at Fort Belvoir. Of course, he doesn't answer because you can't have your phone on base. I leave a message and say, hey dad, I know you're currently doing PT with other soldiers at Fort Belvoir, but I need you to come home so you can drive me home from the golf course that's behind our house. This lady won't let me walk 50 feet to our front door because I'm not allowed on her pathway. Okay, I'll see you in about 2 hours. Thank you, bye-bye. I look at EG and say, okay, he'll be here in about 2 hours. You're more than welcome to stay here with us until he comes. EG gives me this ticked off look. I'm just as ticked. My foot was hurting and I felt like I was about to pass out. Some of you all might ask, why didn't you just ignore her and keep walking? No, she parked her golf cart in the way and stood in front of us, blocking our way back to my house.
Well, I'm not waiting here for 2 hours. That's ridiculous. Can't you see that my son is sweating from the heat? I need to take him home.
So you understand why I'm trying to go home now. I need my medication as well. EG looks at my foot again to see I have a boot and it's bandaged up too.
I bet you're not even injured. You're probably just faking it for attention.
Her kid tried pulling my crutch from me and says, Mommy, I want to play with the metal thingies. Why won't she let me? Excuse me? You don't just get to assume crap about me. You don't even know me. And get your kid off me before I call the police. I started to try and walk around her, but it's hard walking in the mud and wet grass on crutches. She saw that I nearly fell.
Okay, fine, go home. But I never want to see your face again around here.
She snaps a photo of me.
If I see you again, I'm calling the police.
It's okay. I never want to see your ugly butt face again either. Go ahead, call the police. I have every right to be here since my family owns this property. At this point, I was in my backyard. I look at my friend and say, man, she is a nightmare. She just laughs. To this day, I've never seen her by my house again. What's the bet that she didn't even live in the area? She herself probably moseyed on in. Started using the golf course and then didn't like that there was some kids around. But you know what? Those kids lived there and had every right to be there. The paths to get to the houses are obviously there for a reason. So you can get from the golf course to your house or from the gym to your house. As long as you're not getting in the way of the golf carts, I don't see what the problem is. This story was called, You Don't Have Kids, You Should Pay For Me. So I had a friend I would go to yoga with often. We started going to lunch after our workout. It was fun. We would sit on this amazing balcony and relax and have our lunch while talking about everything that had gone on that week. The first week the waiter gave me the bill and without a second thought I just paid it. Normally I have done the I get this time and you get next time thing. Only thing is, the second time the waitress handed it straight to me again. I look at my friend, who starts getting all her things ready to go, and I just again pay for it, although slightly confused. Then the third time before the same thing happened, I asked the waitress the reason I kept getting the full bill from her. I asked while my dining partner was away. The waitress looked uncomfortable and stated my friend each time told her I was paying. I told the waitress to please split the bill, and no such arrangement has been made. My friend returned to the table, ordered another drink, and I asked the waitress for my bill so I could be checked out. She brought both our bills, and I pulled out my debit card to pay for my part. I owed $12.32, much more manageable for my budget. My friend's bill was $38.24, about average of her last two bills. My friend looked at the waitress confused.
"Oh no, I'm not paying for that. Put it on her tab."
I look at her with a question. Excuse me?
"You paid the last 2 times."
I know I did. That's why I'm surprised that you're not paying for me this time. That is when she said the annoying words,
"I have kids. You don't. You can afford it."
Excuse me? I said, clearly offended. If you can't afford it, why are you consistently ordering 3 times my bill? I glared at her. She looked at me and said,
"You know I don't get to go out much. I deserve this."
I was so frustrated. Yeah, you deserve it, but not on my dime. Also, you go out all the time. She called me selfish and clarified she had no card or money to pay for her part. The waitress said she needed payment from one of us or the police would be called. I paid EM's part of the bill and left a note and 0% tip on my receipt. I stopped talking to EM, who made it a point to tell everyone in class she was so confused and did not understand what the problem was, and found me selfish considering it was only $38. The restaurant called and asked if they could do anything. I just told them to train staff regarding checkout procedures. It was an odd situation for me. I was uncomfortable, and I feel threatening police on me for food and drink I did not order or touch was uncalled for. I never went back. Entitled people always make some sort of excuse to have claim over your property, and then if you don't want to give your property to them, of course you're the selfish person. She knew exactly what she was doing, intentionally not bringing any money to the restaurant. I hate the whole back and forth shouting each other thing. Whose turn it is, all of that. Just you pay for your stuff, I'll pay for my stuff. And if it's a special occasion or something, then I'll shout you, and there's no obligation for you to shout me back. This story was called Entitled Grandmother Steals Kids' Popsicles. This story happened when I was 8 or 9 years old, and my mum still gets mad at this whenever she thinks about it. In my town, there is an annual carnival procession. It's always in the evenings with lots of lights, dressed up people, and of course, a lot of wagons with people throwing candy and balls and stuff. Normally my dad would be with us, but this was a time when my parents' marriage had started to deteriorate already, and I think he went to his parents' house for a few days to cool off. Now, as usual, my mum and I went to see the parade. Now, you need to know that my mum is all of 150 centimeters, 4.9 feet, and me being an 8-year-old child was still smaller than this. So we would usually try to get to the parade extra early to make sure we would stand in front and, actually see the parade. I'd been having a great time, catching candy, watching the wagons, when suddenly there was a wagon that had these popsicles tied to strings, and the people in the wagon would wave the popsicles around for people to grab them. This had never happened before, and it hasn't happened since either, so I think this was something special they did for an anniversary of the parade or something. Or it was deemed to be dangerous, as getting a popsicle bonked against your head can be rather painful. Ask my uncle, who was standing 40 meters from us and kept getting hit by these things. Now, because both my mum and I were rather small, the strings weren't long enough for us to just grab them while standing. I just looked at them and didn't even try. But my mum knew how fond I was of popsicles, so she threw her full 150 centimeters into trying to jump high enough to grab a popsicle, and lo and behold, she got one. But as she was tugging the popsicle down to me so I could grab it, this older woman, e.g., suddenly appeared out of nowhere and yanked the string out of my mum's hand, grabbing the popsicle just before I could get it. My mum, naturally outraged, turned around and saw the woman doing this to other little kids as well, just grabbing the strings and pulling the popsicles away from them. But before my mum, or any of the other parents, could really do something, as most of them were stunned by this action, the woman turned around and disappeared into the crowd, her hands filled with popsicles. Sadly enough, it was only the one wagon having the popsicles, and by the time we'd recovered from this shock, they'd already disappeared around the corner. I was, naturally, a bit disappointed by this, but we'd managed to get a nice haul of candy at the end of the evening, and my mum had managed to snag a big bag of popcorn, so I was content. As we were walking home with another parent and their kids, my mum suddenly stops as she sees the EG from before, walking with a gaggle of teenagers, aged 13 to 16. The other parent with us, who also had some popsicles stolen from her children, took one look at EG and marched over there. This conversation is how my mum later told it, as I was distracted by the other kids, so didn't pay a lot of attention to the conversation. Hey, wait a minute, I want to ask you something. EG stops walking. Can I help you? Yes, actually. Why did you grab the popsicles from my kids and the other girls? Points at me. Hands. I don't know what you're talking about. You do, both of us. Points between my mum and herself. Saw you taking those popsicles from our kids. Why did you do that? Well, they weren't their popsicles now, were they? They were still hanging from the strings, so technically they were still up for grabs. Other parent and my mum can't believe what they're hearing, but EG continues before they can react. And besides, look at those bags your kids have. They're basically bursting with candy. So what does it matter if they didn't get a popsicle? My grandchildren wanted popsicles, and as your children already had a lot of candy, I didn't think you'd mind. You don't want your children to get fat or get cavities from eating too much candy now, do you? Both my mum and the other parent look at the teenagers standing behind the EG, who all had equally filled bags of candy, most even larger than ours. I remember at this point that my mum, who had been silent throughout the whole exchange, was starting to look very angry and was getting ready to give EG a tongue lashing. When a car pulled up beside the group, apparently EG's husband had gone ahead to get the car. No parking close to the parade, and had arrived to pick everyone up. At this, my mum decided she didn't want to get into a screaming match in the middle of the street at 11 PM, so she just motioned for us to start walking back home. To this day, she regrets not having said anything to that EG, as you don't just steal candy, or anything, from kids, or anyone, you know? I hate that internal conflict of whether I'm supposed to say something, or do I just shut my mouth because I don't want the conflict? Because sometimes, yeah, later you look back and you regret it. Like, I wish I said something. I had this great line that I have now formed in my head, but at the time I didn't have anything. But who's to say if you said something that you wouldn't have regretted that as well? It reminds me of the proverb, do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you yourself will be just like him. Answer a fool according to his folly, or he will be wise in his own eyes. Whether you choose to engage with an entitled person, or you choose to run away, either way you kind of lose just from interacting with them in the first place. Huge shout out and thanks to Sue Butterfield, our newest Captain Voicey veteran. If you'd like to be a member to help support the channel, just click the join button below. Post your stories, memes, and fan art at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.